of gas prices. It affects consumers day to day and their confidence. So if the gas prices do increase, coffee consumption would decrease. So for my research design, the study implements correlational research, which proposes to identify significant correlations with coffee consumption. Every single variable underwent 3 analyses. First, the level analysis, which graphed a line chart to see the equation and see the trend. A correlation coefficient was performed in Excel prior to the regression analysis just to see if there was a relationship. The second was a percent change analysis, taking out the trend and just looking to see what the data has done over the years. And I also performed the correlation coefficient to see if there was that relationship. And then a single linear regression analysis. Looked at 4 focal points on those results. The first was the adjusted R-square, tells you how well the independent variable predicts the dependent variable. The coefficient, I looked at the sign of the coefficient, so whether it was a positive or a negative number. And this is important with aligning what each variable's impact had on coffee consumption, which I just went through. So we'll kind of get through in that a little bit in the future too. I'll explain it a little bit better. The t-stat, I was looking above 1.67, that shows that the variable is significant, and the confidence in the overall model that the independent variable predicts the dependent variable. After each variable was put through each one of those analyses, the significant variables that stuck out in those were put into a multiple linear regression analysis to see if there were further strength in the equation or how they correlated with each other. And then the results of that, there were 2 final equations. And between those 2 equations, we had to do an empirical analysis to see which one statistically was better. And then lastly was the elasticity. If retail coffee prices increase, how much will the coffee consumption decrease? I needed a number on that. So my results, the initial significant variables were in Group A, factors specific to the coffee industry, retail coffee prices, and the percent white of total US population. In Group C, there was consumer behavior indicators, the household debt per capita, the unemployment rate, homeowners' equity, and gas prices. These were my initial significant variables. So I put all of those into a multiple regression analysis, all next to coffee consumption. And the first regression, I eliminated household debt per capita and homeowners' equity. And the reason why I eliminated it is because it changed the coefficient sign. So for example, the logic in this was if household debt per capita increased, coffee consumption would decrease. And that sign showed otherwise. It was a positive sign. So I eliminated that, along with homeowners' equity. The second multiple regression, after I took out those 2, ran all of the variables again, and for the same reason, eliminated gas prices because the correlation or the coefficient sign. So I came up with a foundation equation, which included the variables percent white of total US population, the unemployment rate, and retail coffee prices. And the adjusted R-square was very strong, 91%, and the coefficients, I'll give an example here too. X1 is the percent white of total US population. So if that increased, then coffee consumption would increase, giving the positive sign here. And then these signs are also unemployment rate increases, coffee consumption would decrease, therefore there's the negative 2.6. The t-stats are very strong, above 1.67, and the confidence is strong as well for this foundation equation. So the next step was to just trial and error, add in different data sets to see if it made the equation stronger and the model stronger. And the final equation 1 was percent white total population, unemployment rate, retail coffee prices, but Starbucks stock price actually made it stronger. So we have the adjusted R-squared 0.92, and all of the coefficients were the correct sign. T-stats were strong, and the confidence were great confidence. But in going through my trial and error approach further, I found another equation that was very similar. It was very strong, just like this one, and the only difference was the second x variable, which is the S&P 500 in this one, whereas it was the unemployment rate in the prior equation. Adjusted R-square again, 0.92. The coefficients are all the right sign, t-stats above 1.67, and great confidence. So now I had to figure out which equation was actually the best fit equation. And if I just guessed on which one I thought would be better, I picked the unemployment rate equation, equation 1, just because I feel like that was a better indicator for my judgment rather than the S&P 500. But to go through and figure out statistically, let the numbers talk, which is the better equation. I did an empirical analysis and I eliminated the 2009 and 10 data, put it to the side so I can have some competition between the two equations. So the multiple regression analysis was 1964 to 2008. And I plugged in the numbers to see what that would be and came up with a predicted value. And then I had an actual value to compare it with and what the residual was. So for this equation 1 with the unemployment rate, 7.77 in 2009, 7.0 in 2010. And the actual values. So the residual average was 4.37. I wanted the lower number because it would be a better equation. So my equation 2, I did the same thing, and it was actually 3.45 as the residual average. So this was my winning equation, which I had thought it was the unemployment. So in conclusion here, it's the percent white of total US population, the S&P 500, retail coffee prices, and Starbucks stock price. Now for the elasticity. I did a regression analysis of the natural logs of significant variables, and my objective was how much will coffee consumption decrease when retail coffee prices increase. And the results were if coffee prices increase by 10%, coffee consumption will decrease by 3%, which is interesting to put a number on that, not just guess. So going back to my original research questions, I wanted to answer them in conclusion. What economic and coffee-specific variables statistically drive US coffee consumption? Percent white of total US population, S&P 500, retail coffee prices, and Starbucks stock price. My second question was, what is the statistical equation model that can be used to predict coffee consumption? How is that constructed? And the beautiful equation here, the final, what's taken so long to find, I found it by the level percent change, single regression, and multiple regression analyses. And the third question, what can explain this decline from 64 to 2010 in the consumption? And an explanation we found was the percent white of total US population. And you can see the trend going down over the last 46 years, and then kind of back to coffee consumption, seeing both. And the relationship was very highly correlated. So that's how I came up with it can explain the decline. And the fourth question, what is the price elasticity of US coffee consumption? If coffee prices increase by 10%, consumption will decrease by 3%. So overall, based on this study, the long-term demographic trends and the factors specific to the industry are what drive coffee consumption. The general economy and consumer behavior do have some impact and should not be excluded from this. They just weren't the drivers, like the long-term demographic trends and factors to coffee industry. And the predictive model provides a valuable tool that can be used to understand and predict coffee consumption under different economic, market, and price assumptions. It can be useful for producers, traders, all parties in the coffee industry, valuable for nations seeking to understand, adapt, and plan for changes in consumption over time. And to look at a few implications of further research, the type of coffee demand and the place consumed. So there's different types of coffee that people would consume. So a further look into that and finding the data for that and seeing how that would correlate different would be further research. And then the place consumed, if they're consuming it at home or if they are out at the coffee shop, at work, different places, see how that is different as well. And also the impact of alternative beverages, like soft drinks or energy drinks, and finding the data on that and correlating to see if that has anything to do with the decline in coffee consumption. And an improved measurement of Starbucks' impact. I attempted to get a hold of Starbucks and find the annual number of stores in the US that they had from early on. They were founded in 1971, so it would be from then on, but they were unable to give me that information. So if there was a way to get that information and finding out more, because we use more proxy variables with the Starbucks stock price and the Starbucks presence, so an improved measurement of Starbucks impact, so I'm guessing more knocking on their door and maybe showing up there to find if you can even get that information. And this concludes the US economic analysis of coffee consumption. So I'll take any questions you all may have now. Jose, I know you have one.
Yeah, one question that I have, and you raised it right at the very end, is all of these alternative caffeine, like the Red Bulls and the Monsters of the world, have just been out on the marketplace, and really in any kind of impact on the last 3, 4, 5 years, it would be interesting.
Yeah, and I tried
in the future to see how that's going to further affect it, because it's, again, I don't know the demographics, but it seems that it makes no difference what the ethnicity or the gender is. It's a young versus older that just flocks to
the energy drinks.
To see what that does. If now, in addition to the ethnicity angle or the race angle, that there's now a generational angle that would be a second cut on, for example, taking the white percentage of population, and then further study would be look at the age demographic and see if the coffee consumption changes with the changes in age.
And I wanted originally to do ages. Well, actually, there's two things in that. I wanted to see if there was an age group that consumed more coffee for a long period of time, but it would go back and forth over the last 50 years. Nothing was kind of sticking out, and then it went to the percent white of total US population. And then for like soft drinks or energy drinks, I called Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I tried to get the data to be able to pull for the statistical analysis, but I feel like Starbucks, there could be definitely further research and pressuring them to get that, or finding certain loopholes and figuring out that data. But yes.
Heather, well, first of all, I mean, you're the first MBA presentation that I've seen.
Hope you liked it. Thank you.
Set the bar at a good height. If I was Starbucks and I realized that percentage of white, or the white population in the United States was declining, what products would I be launching to target the Asian or the Latino or the African American population? What do they drink?
Yeah, I think they're actually doing a pretty good job of what I've read and researched on Starbucks is that depending on which demographic they go in, they prep for that. And like teas are huge in China. And they actually have someone, a Chinese marketing executive that works for Starbucks, that she goes over to kind of like talk to them and kind of bring more customers to the table to see what they want, what they like. And definitely tea, I've seen, has been a bit big on that. The different African countries.
So I mean in the United States. So for example, if the white population is going down in the United States, what do African Americans
here?
What do other ethnic groups here drink?
I think tea is big in the Asian culture. But I would be very interested to see the research on that within Starbucks and maybe help them out a little bit, going and, I mean, it's a big deal. And if it's declining like this, you can see it kind of, consumption it's kind of leveling out, so it wants to start going back up. But then again, depending on these drivers, and that could be detrimental to it. Yes?
I was kind of thinking from the beginning of your presentation about how, they were the little university